Shalom, brothers and sisters. Let's talk about Lapid for a second. Lapid condemns Russia for first time as Prime Minister. Now, he did this in February before he was Prime Minister, but now it's the first time Israel as a country is seen as condemning Russia, who's already antagonistic with Israel, and tensions are high. He's now come out and he's condemned them. Prime Minister Yair Lapid condemned Russia's attacks on civilian targets in Kiev on Monday night in the first such statement from an Israeli Prime Minister. I strongly condemn the Russian attacks on the civilian population in Kiev and other cities across Ukraine, he wrote. I send our sincere condolences to the families of the victims and the Ukrainian people. I strongly condemn the Russian attacks. In response, the Russian embassy in Israel said in a statement, "We heard words of strong condemnation from Israeli officials about Russia's attacks on the civilian population of the cities of Ukraine. According to the Ministry of Defense of Russia, today the Russian armed forces launched a precision attack on military facilities, communication hubs, and energy infrastructure of Ukraine. It is worth noting that unfortunately, Israel has chosen to remain silent during 8 years of continuous Ukrainian terrorist attacks on the citizens of Donbas, to turn a blind eye to the latest murderous Ukrainian attack on a refugee convoy in the Kharkiv region, monstrous murders of civilians by Azov neo-Nazis in Kupiansk and Dugina, and recent Ukrainian terrorist attack on the Crimean Bridge, as well as many other horrific and unpunished crimes by the Kiev regime." That was their statement. Now, two things. Firstly, I absolutely agree, condemn attacks on civilian centers, which are taking place from Russia's side. The general in charge now is known as pretty much a mad dog who gets results because it looks like he doesn't have a conscience or feelings. So it's what Putin needs right now to get this thing wrapped. It's wrong. It's really wrong, and that's why we pray for the civilians in those areas. On the flip side, I am also quite convinced that atrocities are taking place in reverse on the other side. We can't just be looking at one side of the news. So let's park that. Attacks on civilians, no matter which side you're fighting on, and in civilian centers, and hurting them is wrong. And we know these things happen in war, but we pray for the civilians on both sides, and we pray for those that are unfortunately caught in the crossfire happening. Now, to the point here with Lapid that I'm trying to get to. Lapid, pretty much like a booby trap for Israel. In the very, very short time that he's getting to be prime minister, Bennett steps down and hands over to Lapid for a couple of months. Why bother? Why not just stay in office till the elections and hand over? Lapid wasn't supposed to be in charge until much later, but he gives it to him now. And in that short time, he's called for a two-state solution immediately. He started the whole ball rolling on that. He's done a disastrous maritime oil deal with Lebanon, which the whole of Israel is screaming about and saying they're going to overturn once the elections takes place. That's caused chaos and the enemies to realize that there's weak people in charge of Israel at the moment. It set the stage for war. And now, just to really stoke that pot, he goes and antagonizes Russia as well and just pushes all their buttons. These are all their buttons. And he's pushing them loudly for Israel. Now, Israel didn't speak out in the past. If you go and read up on that, you'll see because they had an agreement with Russia that they could hit the targets they needed to hit in Syria. And because of that, they couldn't outright openly antagonize Russia more than they needed to. Now they've outright and openly antagonized Russia and drawn battle lines. Now Russia has no excuses. And this affects things like the Russian Jews that are currently struggling to make Aliyah because Russia's already stuck a big problem in that whole situation. So for me, Lapid really is the jack in the box placed there to cause as much chaos as he can and set the stage for what lies ahead, which is not good, going into 5783. So we'll keep an eye on this going forward. Keep watching. God bless and shalom.